Paul Ryan announced earlier this week that he was not seeking re-election. There's a lot of theories. There's a lot of inquisitive statements being made about Paul Ryan. I've got a theory, and I want to hear your opinion of my theory. I think Paul Ryan is a good soul. I think Paul Ryan is a serious politician. I think Paul Ryan probably understands, and I've heard even say some Democrats say this, Paul Ryan probably understands the budgeting process as well as anybody in Washington. He's a bit of a wonk when it comes to the fiscal ideas.
Not just a bit of a wonk.
Well, I mean, he's a total wonk.
Total wonk, practically.
But in all honesty, he lacks many accomplishments. I mean, we got $1 trillion deficit this year. He's been Speaker of the House in a Republican-led, the House and the Senate are in Republicans' hands. They still couldn't demonstrate any fiscal restraint. But my theory is different. My theory is that Paul Ryan is not a Trumpite. He's not a populist at heart. He's more of a traditional Republican, no. And he senses that this Trump phenomenon, wherever it goes, is not something that's going to be easy for him to digest and deal with. He wants the Republican Party to be a party of ideas and principles and values and matters related to budget and taxes and things like that. And there's just not much of an appetite in Washington today, nor is there much of an appetite in the Republican voting base.
I think you're absolutely right. But I do think, in a sense, it kind of represents his not running for a re-election, kind of the end of intellectual conservatism in a way, the end of people who care about size of government issues and spending. The fella probably made a mistake taking the job as Speaker to begin with. He was better served in the kind of thing that he did and did well as chairman of the Budget Committee and then chairman of Ways and Means and these kinds of things. And I think it became pretty clear that the president had no interest in going to the one thing that Ryan has always had at the top of his mind and firm in his mind, is to try to settle things with these entitlements. And when he saw that wasn't going to happen, he wasn't even going to get a shot with this president in office. And I think there's some personal stuff in it. Paul Ryan is a strong Roman Catholic churchman. I would rather suspect that he sees some things happening that he just isn't in accord with, and he's a strong family man.
But, Rod, it's hard to call Paul Ryan's political career success when you leave as Speaker the year that the Republicans are in charge and the annual deficit will exceed $1 trillion.
First off, is that I thought Paul Ryan, and this is I thought he was spineless, and I think once he leaves office, he'll be able to find his spine somewhere in Milwaukee. But you look at this guy, and his proudest accomplishment as Speaker is passing that tax cut, which I think you and I agree it's just egregious.
Well, it was a Trump tax cut.
It was a Trump tax cut, but he got it through the House, and there's a lot of Republicans on that far right Freedom Caucus and I'll call them moderate, common sense fiscal Republicans, which I think you would fit in, and crammed it down their throat, benefiting corporations in the upper income bracket, which we all knew. You and I have talked about it. They didn't need a tax cut. Then you pass, right after that, though, you pass this budget, which all the complaining, think of how many news conferences Paul Ryan had when Obama was president about, awful spending, deficit spending, running up these deficits. And then he presides over that budget, which what's the estimate in 2020?
It's over $1 trillion.
Over $1 trillion. A year.
1.1 to $1.3 trillion.
1 year. Mm-hmm. In a year. We ain't talking about in a decade. We're talking about in 1 year.
650 to 700 billion this year.
So I guess he accomplished all he could accomplish because you can't raise the deficit. I don't think too much more than that.
But this is the party of
he will go down. He will go down as a failure as Speaker of the House.
Well, I wouldn't want to go that far. A failure. He had a few accomplishments, but I think it was with this man in the White House is completely temperamentally, intellectually, in almost every respect, the complete antithesis of a person like Paul Ryan, but a serious young man. But now he's only 48. What he may do is go back and continue to be active in Wisconsin Republican politics and wait for the time of Donald Trump to pass.
But he'd run for governor, maybe, and then he'd be home with his kids.
But he lost to Trump. I mean, in essence, you called it the modern intellectual conservatism, the thoughtful fiscal restraint, the thoughtfulness that is required to pass comprehensive tax reform. Trump's not that guy. And you just said, I mean, there's
and Trump is so mercurial. You don't know where he's going from day to day. Where he says he's going, lots of times, isn't that. I mean, look at this business with Syria. He sends out all these tweets. Oh, man, it's going to be bad for the Russians and bad for Assad and that animal and all this kind of thing, and we're going to nail them. Nothing's happened. Now, I'm not saying whether you're you're pleased that nothing's happened. There's an element in the country that says, that's good. There's others that say, it's not. You're telegraphing what you intend to do, but you don't know from day to day what position that the president's going to take on any matter, domestic or foreign policy matter.
And then I'm going to let Rod jump in here. But his popularity is 87% with Republican-based voters.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a lot of us are a lot of y'all. I'm not as disenchanted as others are. A lot of traditional Republicans are real disenchanted with the methodology of Donald Trump. I'm not. And the majority of Republican voters have a more negative opinion of Paul Ryan and his worldview than they do Donald Trump.
You know his favorability rate is 16%. Now, we've been fussing about Trump staying between 35 and 40, but he just staying right in that realm between the real clear. What is it? Real clear is average. What?
41.8.
41. So you could use. Let me finish. Paul Ryan's at 16. Okay, as much as Trump has been bashed, so in other words, what that tells me is there's more people not like you that are holding their nose. Y'all didn't see John Boehner this morning on the Today Show. Now, if you pull Boehner aside and really ask him what's going to go on, they asked him about Trump. He says, I like him. I disagree with everything he's doing and saying on these other issues. But if you take away all that, and if he would just basically, I'll call it, using my words, not Boehner, shut up, quit tweeting, and act like president, you could look at, he has done traditional Republican things, but you can't see it because of all the noise Trump is creating on other issues.
But that's about policy.
But in other words, so John Boehner be one of those guys that would give him a negative rating.
Republicans,
well, let me finish.
Like Trump on policy.
Yes, that's my point. Is that Boehner would say, "Well, I'll give him that. I like him on what he's doing. I don't like him how he's doing it, but I like what he's doing."
But I want to go back to what you said. See, I think this is where we may disagree a little bit. The traditional Republican office holder stylistically does not like Donald Trump. The Republican voter has no problem with the way Trump rolls. I mean, the polls clearly show that. Stylistically, the traditional establishment Republican finds his style to be repulsive. The voter does not.
Amen.
The voter does not. The voter's really in tune with this. Hey, he's a crazy man. I voted for a crazy man. He can't get too crazy for me. I know that bothers you, and I have such respect for you and your camp, the way people believe Republican office holders should behave and operate. But the public is very different today. They don't have a problem with Trump's behavior.
Well, it depends upon which public you're talking about.
The Republican voter.
In South Carolina, but not anywhere else.
Well, I mean, in some places, I would imagine it doesn't play as well. But
it depends upon how you think about the fella. And depends upon what
he's a mixed bag to you. I don't put words in your mouth, but Trump's a walking contradiction to you.
Well, most of my problem with him is stylistically how he's managed the presidency, what he says.
The lack of respect he has for the office.
For the office, his names, these tweets, and in a good part, his nastiness.
But his policies are very much in tune with what you believe.
I like tax cuts. I think it's far overdue. Now, I agree with you that the tax cuts for the corporate guys were too big. They didn't need a 15% tax cut on the corporate guys and the high earners. They could have done just as well, and could have done just as well in terms of the economy and growth and whatever with about half that. But overall, I'm not going to be against tax cuts.